the place where we're diving into the deeper meaning of life and asking the big questions. My name is Jannike, and today I'm here with Dr. Christiane Northrup, and it's such an honor for me to be with her today. She is the author of this amazing and paradigm-shifting book, Goddesses Never Age. And she's internationally known for her empowering approach to women's health and wellness. And she teaches women how to thrive every step of their lives. She's a board-certified physician and a former assistant clinical professor. She's a New York Times best-selling author and the foremost authority on everything that can go right with a female body. Hello, Christiane. Welcome.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, it's good to be here. I love Norway. I love everything about your country, so it's perfect.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I have to say that this has really touched me, this book. And I really let myself go back and forth and have a true journey with it, because I feel you've been so open about yourself also in the book. And that has helped me to feel, oh, how do I feel about this relationship? And maybe I need to let go of some stuff. And I've actually done that. I've felt like I all of a sudden start crying when I'm reading. And I'm so grateful that you have been so open in the book. And I think we can speak about that later, how we can release some of the traumas and emotional stuff that we are carrying. Right. But I discovered you only a year ago, and I was so happy to find somebody who was speaking about growing older and how we can grow older in a more graceful way, having that ageless mindset. Because for me and many other women, I'm a bit fearful about getting older, and having these pictures in my mind that everything is going to be decline, especially my looks, and it's like this hidden fear. So I want to start with asking, you said that by writing this book, you kind of healed your ageism. Now
I did. Yeah, I really did. Okay, so let me tell you the whole story. So I was in love with a man who was younger, not much younger, maybe 6 years, and right about 2012, I had gone to Buenos Aires to dance tango because I'd always wanted to learn tango, and it's the dance of the heart and all of that. And the relationship was not going where I wanted it to go, and he was not stepping up to meet me, was very involved with a family business, and particularly his mother, which is something that is a common theme, where he just couldn't get out from underneath the family responsibilities. I had a milestone birthday, and my daughter, I said, don't do anything. Don't do anything for this birthday. Not only did she do something, she sent around to every friend I'd ever had, maybe, well, not every, but, maybe 15 people, has them do a little video, which they then present at this party that I didn't want to have. And then I go to Buenos Aires, and one of the gifts was this very expensive goddess necklace, a sort of a crescent moon necklace, very beautiful, made of gold and so on. And I'm walking on the second day in the streets of Buenos Aires, and a criminal comes up behind me and snatches it off my neck. Now, I was so traumatized that I mentioned it on Facebook to my community. And my now friend, Tosha Silver, who wrote Outrageous Openness, Letting the Divine Take the Lead, she said, what an amazing stroke of luck. Kali herself required a sacrifice, a goddess necklace. That means the goddess herself is taking you on a journey. Well, right about that time, I was having a session with Doris E. Cohen, with whom I do dream work. And Doris is a clinical psychologist and speaks 8 languages. And I've worked with her for a long time, I think since 2009. And in one of my dreams, I was worried about growing older. And she says to me in her inimitable accent, my dear, goddesses never age. Because like so many women, I was under the impression that all men want someone who's 20 years younger and all of the rest of it. And so I began a process of reinventing myself. And this is really interesting. So I ran across the work of Dr. Mario Martinez, who wrote the Mind-Body Code. And he did a study of 700 healthy, vital centenarians on every continent of the earth. And they all had the same things in common. Didn't matter if they're Norwegian, Chinese, doesn't matter. They're all the same. They're outliers. They don't go to doctors. This is one of my favorites. And I just heard this from a 94-year-old who a friend of mine met up in Nova Scotia. A vital, wonderful guy having the time of his life. And what was his advice? Don't hang around old people. He was 94. Now, what they're talking about is not chronologic age. They're talking about biologic age. So 30-year-olds who are old. I do. 35-year-olds who are negative, pessimistic, don't see what's in front of them as a brilliant future. So I began to realize that I needed to change my approach. Also, Dr. Martinez taught me another thing. He was on a radio show, a TV show in Canada, and they asked him his age, and he said, I don't give my age. And the reason is not because you're afraid of your age. The reason is we co-author each other's biology. So if I hear that someone is 75, I automatically have a scenario in my mind about what a 75-year-old looks like. But in fact, a 75-year-old could be going on 40 biologically, and many 40-year-olds are like 80-year-olds. So I stopped giving my age, and what happens when you do that is you step out of that portal, because society tells you how you should grow older. It tells you, so for in the United States, in many women's magazines, this is changing because this stuff's catching on. But for many years, what you should wear in your 20s, what you should wear in your 30s, what you should wear in your 40s. And no women's magazine, by the way, goes beyond 50. Like, so, and then people think they need to cut their hair when they turn 50, and you need to start not caring about your appearance. And all of this stuff creates the biology that makes you old, that ages you. Now remember, so Martinez said, a great quote, growing older is inevitable. Aging is optional. So the other day, I was having a visit from Rebecca Campbell from the UK. And I showed her, because for fun, I wanted her to see who I used to be. So I got out some family movies from Christmas in 1992. And she could not believe it. I looked 85. Wow. I really did. Very shut down, very, I need to get those out and, maybe put them on YouTube or something so people can see. The other thing I've been doing for about 16 years is Pilates twice a week. And so all of the joint restrictions and all of that, I was starting to have real problems in the right hip in my late 40s. That's all gone from working on breaking up the dense fascia. So much of what we call aging is just the connective tissue gets all chunked down.
But we do get older, but ageism, Martinez was saying it might be optional, but is that really?
It says getting older is inevitable. Aging, which I call the deterioration of self through time, that's optional.
But does that mean that it's a choice, like somehow, somewhere in me, I can choose or whether to have wrinkles or not? Like I can actually die without wrinkles. I can look young as a 19-year-old if I just were eating right, having the perfect lifestyle, like being kind of a Buddha. I would just really not age at all.
Oh, no. I think your body is going to go through some physical changes, particularly in the skin. When I say growing older is inevitable, aging I'm really talking about one's attitude, brain power. We know, for instance, that women in their 70s who exercise regularly have the same memory as a 20-year-old. All these things that society tells us, that your eyesight will deteriorate, your hearing will deteriorate, your muscle strength will deteriorate. Oh yeah, you're going to get some skin changes.
Okay.
But there, if you want to, there's all kinds of things you can do with that, with laser and so on. And that all depends on the person.
Right. So tell us a little bit about our belief system, because you say that becomes a biology, like the way
It does.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Yeah. So what happens is there's a couple things that happen. People really believe that as they grow older, it's natural to lose their balance. It's natural to lose their muscle tone. I want to give you something that happened to me a year and a half ago. I developed a frozen shoulder on the left, very common in midlife women. And so these muscles, I just couldn't use the muscle. And my whole arm deteriorated. It looked 95. I mean, all that crepey skin of an old person, that's completely reversed since I was able to use the muscles again. So we have this notion in our culture that it's inevitable for physical function to really decrease over time. And a lot of that is a belief system. So for instance, with doing Pilates, when I started Pilates, my body was like a fire plug. I mean, it was like very kind of not flexible and stocky and not moving, just very solid. And that's all changed because of moving in a certain way. Yesterday on my radio show, I interviewed Joan Vernikos. Joan was the head of the NASA Life Sciences Department that sent John Glenn into space. And when she sent him into space, he was 77, I think. No one knew if an older person could survive in space, but he wanted to go. And he was head of the Senate Subcommittee on Aging at the time. Joan realized when he came back he was fine, and he kept the same training schedule as the 35-year-olds. When they came back from 2 weeks in space, John Glenn was fine. A 35-year-old was not. But what Vernikos found out is weightlessness is the cause of aging. So what happens is people sit. They sit all the time. They don't move the way they used to. And that recreates weightlessness. So she did experiments with 20-year-olds, keeping them at bed rest for 3 weeks. Bed rest decreases pulmonary function, decreases bone mass, decreases cardiac output. Literally, it ages you to be inactive. We are designed to move. And what happens to so many is they stop moving. And that is a huge cause of the deterioration that we see in older people. She told the story, this was fun. Robert Mueller was head of the Apollo program in the United States that put the man on the moon. She got an award for her work. And when she got off the stage, this man was sitting there in a wheelchair. He was 92. It was Robert Mueller. And she said, if you stand up, moving your body through gravity, every 20 to 30 minutes, you stand up out of that wheelchair, you will be able to walk again. And 2 years later, she went to his home for some kind of a reception, and this man walks to the door and offers her a drink. It was Robert Mueller. He had done what she said, just moving the whole physical body through space, sitting up, standing up, sitting down every 30 minutes. She said, will change you in 3 months.
But that makes sense, all the technical equipment we have, the computers and everything, we're sitting more than ever.
Before.
So
right.
It makes so much sense. I'm curious, I don't know if it's possible, but is it possible to postpone your menopause, for instance, postpone like the limit for having children, for instance, in the way you're thinking? Or is that also like a very the natural way, like you will lose your period when you are around
You know,
45?
that is such an interesting question. It's such an interesting question because there are women who still have their periods into their 50s and so on. Um, but let me say this, there's such great wisdom in the menopause and becoming menopausal because the two major neurotransmitters, FSH and LH, follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, they rise in your brain to the same level as when you ovulated, but now they're at that ovulation level for the rest of your life, which often makes you far more intuitive and you make more connections. When you're in your reproductive years, you just have that once a month with ovulation when you get an FSH-LH surge and you get a surge of testosterone. But after menopause, you sort of retain that wise blood, which the shamans say, and then your brain changes to a more intuitive state. So there's some good things associated with that. But I absolutely agree with you that the ovaries will produce hormones in concert with the adrenals for your entire life. So that's why in the research that some of the people have done that I've worked with, women are having the best sex of their lives in their 60s and 70s, far more orgasmic, having a far better time.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
And you also speak a lot about, our relationship to sexuality, that it's good to embrace it more. Can you speak a little bit about that? Like getting in touch with our sexual selves?
Yes, yes. Well, the sexual part of us is life force. So let's just think of it as Kundalini and life force and so on. We know from the work of people like Kim Anami that when you are in touch with your sexuality, well, women are primarily erotic. Now, I understand there's the transgendered people who I find completely fascinating because they're sort of both, and we're moving toward that. But in general, and this is the work of, she wrote Vagina, Naomi Wolf, that a woman has what's called the vaginal pulse amplitude, VPA, and that is a measure of vaginal blood flow. Women's bodies respond to life force starting around puberty, even age 11 or 12. When you see, I've known women who had an orgasm from looking at a beautiful sunset, an orgasm from climbing in a beautiful mountain trail. Our bodies are tuning forks for life force, for the erotic. Now, what Western culture has done is they've made that all about sex, the sex act. But the truth is our bodies are tuned into eros, life force. And so therefore, when you know that, you can have a sexual relationship with a tree or with a flower or whatever. But I do have a whole section, particularly in my book, Making Life Easy, on cultivating your life force through self-pleasuring. And I have, instructions for men and instructions for women, because you can be very in touch with your sexuality and your life force without a partner. And that's very important for women to know, because we always think, if you don't have a partner, that's it for you.
Yeah, that's true.
And it isn't. And it isn't. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I've always felt like sexuality is so spiritual in a way, and
it
an
is.
orgasm
it
is
is.
just it's such a mystery as well. And
yes.
I think it's much deeper than we realize even. As you say, it is the life force, so it's so powerful, and we shouldn't hide it or suppress it. We should just embrace it more.
Yeah, but women have been exploited for that for centuries. They've been exploited. So we were the eros. So the man would dip in, get some eros, and go off and kill things. I mean, this is we're the life force, and we are the moral compass of the earth, the feminine. And so we need to, in my opinion, be very particular about who we let in who we let into our bodies.
Yeah, because the energy lingers, I've heard, for a long
Yes,
time,
it
doesn't it?
does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Like
Yeah,
a year
yeah.
or something?
At least a year. At
least?
least
That's
a year.
crazy.
Yeah, Dr. Pat Allen says 2 years.
Wow.
That when you let someone in, remember the penis is hitting, it's not hitting, but it's right near the cervix, and the cervix is akin, reflexology wise, to the heart of a woman. So when you let someone in, you're letting them into the deepest, your low heart, you see. A man, you can't get to his heart through sex. That will not work.
I read that
sex
in your
for
book.
them is, yeah, that just doesn't work. Right.
Is it cooking that does it?
With men?
Yeah.
I think it is a woman being absolutely true to herself and just being true to herself.
Wow.
And caring for herself more than she cares for him. Meaning putting herself first. Not in a narcissistic, psychopathic way, but truly understanding her needs, because the masculine is naturally giving. The penis puts out semen. The feminine is receiving, and women these days have forgotten how to receive. So you need to become the goddess that he serves.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If you're heterosexual, yeah.
Yeah, because you mentioned in the book also that the energy of the man lingers for a year or two, and the energy of the women with the man just lingers a month or so.
Yeah,
like, what? But that makes sense. It just made sense to me. I want to speak more about like that femininity and that masculinity, because I thought it was so powerful to read that you said that after a lot of work, you finally mated with your soul and became your own soulmate. And I think it was under the chapter that goddesses never loses themselves in a relationship. And it's such an important topic because I think a lot of women do. It's so easy that the man takes all the space and we're just becoming so small within it. So how on earth did you do that?
Not by choice. Not by choice. It was a soul path. If you were an astrologer and I were an astrologer and we went over my astrologic chart, you could see it. You could see where it is. So each of us has in our charts what's called the South Node and the North Node. And these are the nodes of the moon when you were born. The South Node is where you came from, evolutionarily speaking. The North Node is where you must go. It's your soul's path. My South Node is where my sun is in Libra, but Neptune is right up against it, meaning a lot of illusions about relationship. Mercury is down there, all of that. But my North Node is in Aries on the 10th house cusp. It is the warrior. It's like all of this stuff you know about home and family and motherhood and the little picket fence and staying home and cooking and all of that. You've done it for thousands and thousands of years, lifetime after lifetime. The soul, I will not let you do that anymore. And every relationship where you try to collapse yourself into the relationship will dissolve until you've done this work. And I have done this work, but it was the most painful work I've ever done. And now, for years, I would just go dance tango because I so wanted to be held and all of that. Now I really like to be with myself. It's a miracle. I think it's a miracle.
Yeah, it was so beautiful. You opened up about heartbreaks and how you attracted like unavailable men because you hadn't really healed those heartbreaks. And I'm so curious actually how you healed that, because sometimes that seems so impossible, that we have this love affair years ago that we never really got over.
You never quite get over. Okay, what it's about, you need to understand it is about always, and this gets boring after a while, but it's just true. It is about the unhealed little child inside who never ever got the love she needed. And in my case, I have a mother who just did not know how to love me, and my father was so caught up in her needs that he wasn't available. I've spoken to him in some medium sessions, and he says, I was your first scoundrel. Because he's been dead since my Saturn return, age 28. So I married my mother, and that's what we do. That's how the soul evolves. So what you do is, like, here's an example of what I did over and over and over, and that is the 7 Steps of Rebirth that Doris E. Cohen has on her website, and anyone can go. It's drdorisecohen.com, the 7 Steps of Rebirth. So here's what you do. You choose a number from 1 to 10, the first thing that comes into your mind. And then you see it, you take a deep breath, and then you let it out more slowly than when you took it in. So if we just took a deep breath, held it, and then let it out really slowly, and I always do this through my nose, you've engaged the parasympathetic, rest and restore nervous system. So now you're receptive. Now you have that number in your head, and many, many times it's 7. When the secondary teeth come in, sometimes it's 4. And then you see a stop sign in front of you. Stop, you're doing it again. And you go into this magic garden. Just find yourself in this magic garden, and there are angels, and there's a pool of water, and beautiful roses, and all of that. And then you look, and you see that little 7-year-old, and you see what she's doing, and just ask her if she'll come over to you. And many, many times you'll see a little kid who's alone and crying or just playing or whatever, and you ask her to come over to you and maybe sit on your lap or maybe hug you. And sometimes she won't, because many times, depending on your childhood, she doesn't trust you because you were not there for her, because you were that little kid. So now she comes over to you and you say to her, I love you. And you give her a hug and you say, I'm here for you now. Then, this is the most important part of the exercise, you take your leave and you say to her, I'm going to separate from you now, but I'll be back. Now you take another deep breath and you let it out. You open your eyes and you state where you are and the date. So, so now the date is September 7th, 2017. I'm in Yarmouth, Maine. You're in Norway. You bring yourselves back to the present, but there's no time in the unconscious. There's no time. You go back and visit that child for anywhere from 13 to 40 days. 40 days is a very magic number. In the Bible, the Jews were wandering in the desert for 40 years. That 40 is a very important number. You go back 40 days, for 40 days in a row, and if you forget a day, you start over.
Oh.
And that will transform your relationship with that inner child.
So you meet that 7-year-old 40 days, the same 7-year-old.
And watch how she changes. Watch that, because what you're doing, you're growing her up. And then, that grief-stricken, heartbreak person, what you find is that was a 7-year-old running your endocrine system, your central nervous system, and your immune system. And once you grow her up and she knows, okay, I'm in charge now, so that's never going to happen to you again. I'm going to take care of you. Instead of, what do? We want a man to fix that for us. Or we want a boss to fix that for us, or we want our sister. Nobody can fix that for you, which is, it's sort of the best news in the world, right? Because otherwise, you're always a victim. Someone always has to come to make you whole. And when you realize that no one has to come to make you whole, that you can make yourself whole, then it doesn't mean you're going to be alone, and it doesn't mean you don't need other people. It just means that horrible abyss, that grief, that broken heart is gone.
And it really is gone within you?
Yeah, it really is. It really is. So but amazing. I have to tell you, okay, it took, I would say, a lifetime. But probably I was aware of it the last 17 years. But it's really, really gone. But it's like my soul's purpose
Hmm.
because there was no other choice. I mean,
Yeah,
really, if, there was no, if there had been any other choice, trust me, that's the choice I wanted.
yeah.
I mean, I'm a Libra. I'm all about relationship. I mean, I've got 4 planets in Libra, and I have Jupiter in the seventh house of love and marriage, and all of the rest of it.
But it's kind of
Um,
good to hear that it's taking some time, because sometimes I feel like we think it's going to be this quick fix, and we do the exercise 3 times. It's like, it's still there. I don't get it, and
oh,
you're
I know, always, always. Or then you do these courses, like calling in the one and
yeah,
this
yeah,
and
yeah.
that and the other thing, and then you keep thinking, when is this going to work? And I've done 500 vision boards, and
Yeah.
no, 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 no. Sometimes, this is why I love Tosha Silver's work, letting the divine take the lead. Like she says, the right person is already chosen.
I
And
love
you
that.
will, you'll just, and I know this, that person who I was when the goddess took that gold necklace off my neck, she isn't here anymore. I healed her. So I'm happier than I've ever been. I like my body better than I ever have. It's like everything is working. Now, this is a horrible thing that no one wants to hear, but now that I don't need someone, I'm sure that's when the person's going to come.
Yeah, I know. When you least expect it, and that's something you can't plan or do, you can't. I'm not going to want it to happen. It is sort of this paradox that, and life is often like that. This paradox, like people who are trying to get pregnant, when they stop, they adopt someone, then they get
Happens all
pregnant.
the time, all the time. You've
Yeah.
given it up, and that, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it never was for naught. It was to make you the person that you needed to become.
Right.
So if I look at those old home movies of me at Christmas in 1992, my heart goes out to the person
Mm.
I was. I have healed her through great compassion and also great humor. I mean, it's
Mm.
it's fun for me to look at that person
Yeah.
and see why I had to be just exactly the way I was to get through my medical training, to become a doctor, to become all that, when nothing I was saying was accepted in my profession. I mean, I didn't,
I
so
want
you
to
have,
ask you about that actually. Just want to comment on, yeah, it's so beautiful to start seeing kind of this red thread in your life. I'm starting to see that now, and it makes sense. Like there's an intelligence there. It's just not random. My life is not just a chaos. It's actually, I see that I had to do this in order to come
yes,
here, etc.
yes.
But it must have been difficult being in a medical profession, having these kind of thoughts, because you're speaking a lot about surrendering to the divine and the heart. And how are you met speaking about these things in your profession?
Oh, with my immediate colleagues, I just tried to be someone who was included in the jokes because I knew that if I could be included, like I'll give you an example. I was very into nutrition, way, way, way back. And once I had to ask a colleague to cover my practice, like cover the emergency calls and so on for a weekend. And he said, well, what do I do if someone calls in with sprout poisoning? And he meant like they were eating alfalfa sprouts or mung bean sprouts or some healthy food that he knew nothing about. So he was just making a joke about it. Um, so I was, I knew how to fit in until I couldn't fit in anymore. When I wrote The Wisdom of Menopause, that's when I lost my teaching position at the University of Vermont. And I don't know why exactly. I just know that someone behind the scenes said, she's gone too far, talking about the soul and the
Mm.
Uranus opposition at age 42 and how we recover from our family trance, and that, we call it a midlife crisis, but it's predictable. It's
Mm.
predictable. The degree to which you're not following your soul's path is the degree to which you're going to suffer at midlife, and men do too. So that's not included. Remember, Descartes, way back, said to the Catholic Church, all right, you guys get the soul, we'll take the body. And this mind-body split happened, which now in quantum physics, we have way too much data showing that consciousness creates the body. So we can't keep them separate anymore. I've just been ahead of my time. The old paradigm always dies hard. That's why they say science moves forward one funeral at a time.
Oh, gosh. So is this something you're just truly convinced of, or is it something you have felt on your body, like that there's we are consciousness and this spiritual notion and the divine connection that you seem to have, like, is it something you really believe in, or is it a real experience?
Oh, it's something that I believe in, but I've had certainly experiences, but it's almost like since I was a child. I knew about angels. I don't see them, they don't visit me in the middle of the night. I don't have any of that, but it's actually the only thing that makes sense to me, because otherwise you can't explain why things happen to people. Or these other things, like I've had patients who went in for breast biopsies and they were doing all this work on receiving and self-love, and they'd go in and the lesion wasn't there anymore. I mean, I've seen this stuff for years and years and years, or, a woman who prayed and prayed and prayed and her fibroids just went away. She was facing surgery. So I've seen so much. And I myself was going blind in my left eye just before I wrote Mother-Daughter Wisdom, because I wrote everything that I was thinking about my mother. Sometimes how you start a writing process is you just dump it onto the page. You know you're going to edit it later. You know the public's never going to see this. So I just wrote everything, my rage and all of that. And the eye is in the liver meridian, and it's affected by anger. And that weekend, I got some smudge under my left contact lens, and I went away to a conference. And anyway, by the time I sought help from an eye doctor, I was going blind in the left eye. And when I went down to the venerable institution, Mass Eye and Ear Infirmary in Boston, they did a corneal biopsy, and I had infectious crystalline keratopathy. There are 90 cases in the world literature only in people on chemotherapy who are immunocompromised. I, a perfectly healthy person, get this in my eye, and then I'm prescribed antibiotics every hour on the hour to wake up around the clock to put these in. And it was not working. And I remembered that vitamin C is a huge antioxidant. I began taking massive doses, and the eye cleared on its own. Think about it. The divine has a great sense of humor. Vitamin C is vitamin C, S-E-E.
Yeah.
And then I learned later that what I had was not curable.
Later, yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
But see, unlike most people, I would never surf the internet when I had a symptom, ever. Because I know that you're going to be adversely affected by that information. I'm only interested in the people, in the outliers who don't follow the course of whatever the illness is, because I know that we have thousands of cases of spontaneous remission from every known disease. So I want to know what's going on with that. What did they do? What did they think? Because I had a woman call into my radio show, had just been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. I had her call Robert Fritchie, World Service Institute, Healing with Divine Love. She called me back 3 months later, the cancer was gone. So that's what I'm interested in, because that's quantum physics. That's also science, but it's not the Newtonian science we've been taught.
Yeah, and we can be the first ones being cured from something. If it's not been cured before, doesn't mean it can't be cured in the future, in a sense. So it's a very pessimistic way of looking at it. And I want to talk more about that, like the fearful or the big focus on the symptoms all the time. And yeah, that's modern medicine for women anyway. Is all this testing.
You
Right.
know, like
Right.
it's not wellness, it's disease screening. So, you know,
Yeah,
I'm
and the breast testing, I was going to ask you about
mammograms.
your, yeah, mammograms,
Hmm.
because you
Hmm.
wrote that there's a little to none evidence that it actually saves lives.
Right.
And that's crazy. And I just saw on the news yesterday that they were going to screen some another kind of cancer, and people were cheering it up. And I was thinking, wow, there's more and more testing now. Like, eventually, are we going to be screened for every disease there are? Like, go to the doctors every week to test a
Well,
new
this
thing.
is the problem with the misunderstanding. So they now did the Human Genome Project, and now they're testing everyone for genes early on. So now you're at risk for heart disease and you're at risk for this. But what is the truth is 80% of what happens to us, maybe 90%, is epigenetic factors. It's the factors that influence how the gene is expressed. And modern medicine does a terrible job with that. So
Can you
we're just
explain that a
always,
bit further for those who don't understand epigenetics?
yes, yes. Epigenetics is the science of how the environment, your thoughts, your beliefs, your behavior, your diet, your relationships, how all of those things influence the way your genes are read and expressed. So we think we have this genetic determinism. Well, I'm like this because heart disease runs in my family, let's say. And heart disease does run in my family. They've all died of it. And
Oh.
I don't have it. And the reason I don't is I've seen the way my family of origin um, clamped down the flow of joy, but also the expression of anger, like keeping a brave face, never being angry, never expressing yourself fully, trying to keep the peace all the time. Um, so, do I have genetics for heart disease? Yeah, both grandparents on both sides, but I'm not living like them. When I meet a woman whose mother has died of breast cancer, I always say to her, "How much like your mother are you?" And then some will say, "I'm exactly like her," and others will say, we're not like each other at all." And then I would say, "You've got way less of a risk than if you were like your mother." Meaning the beliefs, the behavior, the pessimism, the overgiving, all of that stuff contributes, all of it. So what we need to do instead, like I pretty much stay out of the medical system. I mean, I'm a doctor. I don't go. I know what they're selling and I don't want to buy it. But I do Pilates and I do acupuncture and I do massages with a really intuitive massage therapist once a week. That's actual health care. The other stuff is disease screening. It's fantastic if you need a new knee or a new hip or if you're hit by a car. That's it.
So,
Yeah.
do you advise that we don't do these screenings? Because maybe it can secure some women, like, oh, I'm well, there's nothing there. Because we hear about it all the time, so it's just good to check, and then you're fine. Because, yeah, because, the placebo, like when you go to the doctor, you just feel better already just because you went there and
because you went in.
yeah.
Yeah. So there's something to be said, but here's the data on mammograms. With the new high resolution mammograms, they're finding a lot of what's called ductal carcinoma in situ, which is not cancer. It is it's a lesion that no one knows what to do with. Same with the thyroid screening, by the way. So therefore, to save one woman, you're messing up hundreds of others because they don't have breast cancer, but they have this ductal carcinoma in situ with a scary name. And so they're getting bilateral mastectomies that they don't need. Same is happening.
Something is happening with the sound here.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When you talk,
Huh.
now it's gone. It was like,
Oh, it's gone?
yeah, it's gone.
Okay.
It's like, yeah.
I'll
So,
tell you what,
yeah.
to me, what that is the forces of darkness that don't want me to tell you this.
Yeah, I couldn't hear what you were saying. It was like this, oh my goodness,
Yep.
that's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So Here's what it is. The new high resolution mammograms will find things you would die with, but never die from. So it scares all these women into having bilateral mastectomies, meaning their breasts removed just in case. Yeah. Preventive medicine. They're completely healthy breasts because nobody knows what to do with a diagnosis that has the wrong name. So even the National Cancer Institute has said we need to change the name to IDLE, indolent lesion of undetermined significance. So the problem is this: we are the early diagnosis, same with men and prostate cancer. At least with men, what's happening with men is they are coming to the understanding that 50% of all men who have their prostate removed have urinary dysfunction and sexual dysfunction the rest of their lives. So what's happening with men is they're all getting together in the urology schools, and they're saying, we need to do better. So there's this whole thing now in prostate health called active surveillance. Dr. Aaron Katz in Long Island, Winthrop Hospital with NYU, has pioneered this so that men don't have to have the whole prostate removed. They just are followed, and they do all these lifestyle changes that improve the health of the prostate.
Yeah.
Well, do we have that with breasts? No. Women are taught to sacrifice your breasts, you know? Like if you told someone you wanted to keep your breasts and you're willing to do all of these healthy things and be monitored, an oncologist would look at you like you were crazy. I want to save your life. Remove your breasts. It's interesting. We should look at what men do and do more of that. How often do they remove testicles? Almost never. That would cure prostate cancer, by the way, removing testicles. How many men sign up for that? But women are signing up to have their ovaries removed because they're afraid of ovarian cancer, our breasts removed. Oh my God. We need to rethink this. So thermography is a very, very good approach to breast health because it just measures heat. And it's a scale of 1 to 100. And if you have a lot of heat, it means you have cellular inflammation, which is the precursor of cancer. And you can do lifestyle changes and follow the heat pattern of the breast. And that way you can know what's going on and actually prevent something.
Wasn't there a study in Norway that you mentioned? I saw a talk.
Yeah, that was an interesting study. Yeah. Here's what they did. And I am not going to get the particulars of it right, but the basic overall, and it was a Norwegian study, yes. Yeah. So they took a whole lot of women, like a lot of women, maybe 100,000. One group got regular mammography screening, and the other group didn't. And in the group that wasn't screened, they had far less breast cancer. Huh. And so what the researchers came up with, probably they had as many breast cancers in the non-screened women, but their bodies took care of it. It just went away because we're getting cancer, little bits of it every day. Yeah, and normally the immune system takes care of it. But once you have the diagnosis, right? Yeah. Once you have a biopsy, once you know it's in there, like you go and you get a mammogram and it's abnormal, right? Then you're stuck with it. Like, oh God, they saw something, right? That gets scary. Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of the dilemma.
I thought it was so interesting that you're saying that we actually have cancer cells produced every day, but not the body's healing itself. And that was so positive for me or optimistic for me to hear, because then I'm like, okay, I get cancer cells every day, but mostly I heal myself. And I think then that has to do with me, like a lot of how I think and my lifestyle and everything. And it's so empowering. And of course, I do believe that there's a mystical part as well, that sometimes we do get an illness because we're supposed to die.
No, I completely agree with you. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think we can do so much ourselves, and just having that focus makes us more empowered. And it's such a good feeling that it matters that I take care of myself. That is truly self-love. And that's
yes,
I love, I'm so focused on self-love because I think it all starts there. And the more we love ourselves, the more we can love others. I think
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Is there anything you want to share in the end? Is there anything you're working on now? Like
I'm working on something I'm really excited about, and we don't really have a total title yet, but it's called Dodging Energy Vampires, an empath's guide to health and freedom, or to deal with darkness. So I've been researching about 1 in 5 people is an energy vampire, but 1 in 25 is an outright psychopath. So in New York City alone, there are 100,000 psychopaths. These are people with no conscience whatsoever. They're out for themselves. They're often charming, beautiful, charismatic, and they are at the top of positions in government and in schools, and you need to understand that they exist. And for those of us like you and like me, we're sort of old soul empaths who believe in the good and we believe in the light. There are beings who are trying to trip you up, and it's just important to know that because they survive on what's called narcissistic supply, meaning they will take your life energy and use it for themselves, and they don't love you, they never did, and they leave a devastating swath. And my own life and my own autobiography is a series of these, one after another, in business, in love, and so on. And so it's my next my next big piece of work, and I'm very excited about it.
Wow, that was very different from your other work.
It is, right? I know.
Wow.
It is.
Well, maybe we'll do an interview about that when that book comes out.
That would be good next April. Yep.
All right. Thank you so much, Christiane. Take care. This was really beautiful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay.